Hello guys, my name is Ashley Hartman, and today I'm going to be talking about ecotourism and how as a society we can empower change through global ecotourism. So to begin, um, responsible travel isn't just a choice, it's a powerful commitment to the planet. And to fully understand what ecotourism is, we must recognize the significance of it. Ecotourism is the cause for millions of ecotourists embarking on trips yearly, which is dedicated to enhancing and preserving the wellness of the environment. These dedicated travelers serve as guardians for our planet by fully immersing themselves in ecotourism. It is common to engage in habitat preservation, waste management, cleanup projects, and an abundance of other events that create a positive impact on wildlife areas. These tourists' goal is to spend time in nature and experience the opportunity to enhance, protect, and leave a lasting legacy for the world's magnificent ecosystems that need the help of human life. It is because of these positive outcomes that ecotourism globally should be continued to be positively supported as it encourages sustainable practices and implements change that is significantly beneficial to the environment. One might wonder or ask, what is ecotourism? To grasp the full importance of ecotourism, in this context, ecotourism is defined as environmentally responsible visiting of relatively unspoilt natural areas in order to enjoy and appreciate nature that promotes conservation, has low negative visitor impact, and provides for beneficially active socioeconomic involvement of local populations. This definition is provided by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. If you would direct your attention to the informational graphic to the right of the slide, you will see information provided regarding the sustainable practices that arise through ecotourism. The International Ecotourism Society shared that it minimizes, builds, provides, generates, and delivers, which are all positive principles of ecotourism. Furthermore, in this regard and context of continuing the involvement of ecotourism globally, this includes all 7 continents and 195 countries. As we direct our attention and focus to economical aspects of ecotourism, this type of tourism enhances the economic well-being of local communities and plays a substantial role in the upkeep of conservation and environmental funding. The money flow that comes from this form of tourism is what helps fund these operations. In Hawaii, there are specific hotels that were built and continue to run for the purpose of ecotourism. An example of one of these hotels is Moana Lani Bay Hotel, which offers a sea turtle program during the stay. This has led the stayers to release more than 200 turtles back into their natural habitats since the recent opening. If the support of ecotourists stopped occurring, these hotels designated for using the help of travelers for wildlife conservation would not thrive in their proposed manner. The ecotourism industry can create new jobs that bring its sources of revenue to lift communities out of poverty and fund the development of technology and resources into communities striving to achieve sustainability. It can be suspected that not all money that comes from ecotourism benefits genuine causes and communities. However, if we take a look at the impact made when revenue stopped flowing from ecotourism and who that affected the most, it is evident that the conservation operations and environmental workers within local communities did. The reason and possibility for this evaluation is during the COVID-19 pandemic that hit society, it was able to be evaluated that the main period of time during the lockdown is where the impact of zero revenue coming in from ecotourists and ecotourism impacted the environmental operations the most. A newspaper article released by the Wall Street Journal during the time of the pandemic shed light on the issues experienced by many, such as the closures leading to reduced protection for wildlife and lost incomes for rangers, guides, drivers, cooks, animal caregivers, and many others. A major source of income for these communities was suddenly cut off. Not only does this impact the workers, but it impacted in a wildlife perspective as well. The article shared that the closures have drained funds from efforts to protect critically endangered gorillas and other apes. The specific example provided was in Sumatra. Ecologists can't provide their usual support to a sanctuary for nearly extinct Sumatran rhinos and a nearby elephant hospital. Without continued support for this kind of travel, the world will begin to see the economies of these areas that provide support fail and deteriorate, in which case we will be failing the environment and wildlife in need. In doing so, it shuts down the possibility of new job opportunities, which is why keeping the ecotourism industry alive and supported is essential for the continued well-being of society's workers. Next, ecotourism serves as an opportunity for individuals to experience nature and educate themselves about environmental problems that can lead to further research opportunities. Often, people become more well-rounded and are able to grasp a deeper respect for nature once they have experienced it firsthand. When tourists visit to partake in activities such as beach cleanup, education-based wilderness adventures, and preserving resources, they are immersing themselves in the culture and the surrounding area. This allows them to analyze and recognize the needs outside of their everyday lives. Ecotourism can consist of homestays as well that involve living with another family and intertwining lifestyles to support their farms and/or animals. Another specific example that we can evaluate is in northern Cambodia. The giant ibis species has gone nearly extinct. Following this concern, it became a popular destination for ecotourists, and approximately 2 years following this arising concern, conservation efforts were made and executed thoroughly by the support of tourists. The visitations that came by the thousands allowed for the growth of 300 birds of the species to successfully grow, making the near extinction fade down. This was a direct result of the influx of support from ecotourists around the globe. As these travelers visit these locations for educational purposes, more emphasis is placed on research for these popular areas. The technology and resources needed to appropriately care for these areas are brought to light. Additionally, an academic journal written by author Tracy Rembert shares insight on the evidence of this for Guatemala. It states that ecotourism, besides bringing much needed jobs and recognition to Guatemala, is also aiding the country by establishing traffic near ancient Mayan ruins, which have suffered in the past from looting and defacement. Not only do others get to learn about the history of the area, but also by their visitations, focus is placed on continued restoration for the natural areas. The civilians also gain knowledge on how nature works and in what ways society impacts it. These healthy attributes lead to further civil engagement and overall well-being as a society. The opposing side would present that civilians don't necessarily become more educated on the topic of environmental issues by simply visiting an area and calling it ecotourism. However, the majority of all ecotourism events are conducted by educated guides that are either certified or trained professionals that have the knowledge and authority to speak on the issues in their home base. For this reason, ecotourists learn about what they are doing and for what reasons. When it comes to the environment, the saying, "what people don't know about, they won't care about," holds very true. The act of doing the research to travel to a new location and doing hands-on activities is bound to create learning possibilities. A comparative study of environmental responsibility behavior in ecotourism was conducted from the perceptions of residents and tourists in the specific area of Kilan Mountains National Park. According to the study, both residents and tourists came to the following conclusion. educational level, and occupational distribution have significant effects on residents and tourist perceptions of ecotourism environmentally responsible behaviors. This is evident of the education value that comes from the form of ecotourism travel itself. Although it is travel, no form of ecotourism consists of simply laying out on the beach. These travelers gear up and come prepared to endure long wildlife adventures, amongst many other available opportunities. The same study goes on to share that the overall level of residents' perception of environmentally responsible behaviors in ecotourism is higher than general tourist perception. This is meaning that the tourists that engage in ecotourism specifically are more inclined to partaking in environmentally responsible behaviors due to the education received, in contrast to tourists who just travel to another area for location purposes. This makes evident that people who travel as ecotourists do in fact immerse themselves in a learning environment. Lastly, ecotourism promotes conservation and sustainable practices. One of the main benefits of ecotourism is that it reduces pollution and waste by promoting responsible usage, consumption, and care of natural resources. If you would kindly direct your attention to the graphic on the side of the screen, you can also evaluate the ways in which ecotourism differentiates from other forms of tourism, with the leading factors being it promotes biodiversity conservation and it minimizes the negative consequences for the environment. There are lots of restrictions and guidelines set in place for those that participate in ecotourism and those that make ecotourism events possible. In the world of this form of tourism, it is crucial to limit energy consumption, use renewable sources such as solar power, and avoid single-use plastic. Since these goals are set in the community of these travelers, ecotourists help protect ecosystems from further damages by all pursuing these goals. They are all striving for the same goal, which is essentially to help the planet. Of course, they are doing it as sustainable and efficiently as possible. From the same study conducted by the Public Library of Science, the results came back showing that the satisfaction from both the ecotourists and residents of the area was the leading cause of environmentally responsible behaviors. The following is pulled from the section of the study that was conducted on the relationship between perceived environmentally responsible behaviors and the direct link to satisfaction. It states that residents and tourists will develop certain perceptions of environmentally responsible behaviors concerning the natural environment and personal activities that they are exposed to or perceive during ecotourism. Essentially, by engaging in the activity itself, it promotes the exposure needed for those included in ecotourism to gain those sustainable practices. And as these tourists participate in wildlife conservation, an equal amount of satisfaction comes from doing these activities. By being able to see the impact is what leads the same outcome of developed practices that promote conservation overall. It can be argued, however, that there was harm imposed onto the environment following the construction of the hotels and emissions that continue to increase as a result of these corporations and travels. This contradicts the positive effects of sustainable practices. However, as a society, it can be acknowledged that tourism is not slowing down and is not coming to a complete halt in the foreseeable future. Instead of creating a negative viewpoint on ecotourism for this reason, it would be more ethical and morally correct to encourage people to travel this way as an alternative. People are going to travel regardless, but at least this way, travelers are using their stay to make a difference in the environment and educate themselves about current environmental and wildlife struggles in the area that help sustain cities and workers. The Multidisciplinary Digital Publishing Institute, that publishes an abundance of scientific journals, released information on how they evaluated the effects of ecotourism, positive and negative, following the consideration of all available aspects and pulling from previous studies. The conclusion of this journal reflects that ecotourism is a form of travel that supports the conscious conservation of nature and cultural resources. and that it has less visitor impact compared to other types of tourism with various benefits for local people. It must be noted from this quote that it does have less visitor impact compared to other types of tourism, making it more sustainable and efficient in comparison to the other forms. Additional to this, logically, one must wager the outcome versus the effects. In this case, the current statistic on the relationship between CO2 emissions and tourism is that 8% of the world's annual CO2 emissions stems from tourism. This includes transport-related emissions as well. Taking into account that ecotourism, as evaluated by the Multidisciplinary Digital Publishing Institute, has less visitor impact, it can be estimated that only 1% maximum of this 8% of global emissions is tied back to ecotourism, especially considering that there are hundreds of different forms of tourism that are engaged in yearly. One must not be ignorant of this number and continue to be efficient as possible when traveling. But statistically, the success rates of ecotourism conservation and levels of sustainability provide much more environmental support than the negative aspect of a maximum of 1% estimated ecotourism emissions. To conclude, it is crucial to maintain positive support for ecotourism as it promotes sustainable practices and implements change that brings substantial benefits to the environment. There are an endless amount of ways that ecotourism provides positive outcomes economically, societally, and environmentally. With loss of support, it will be shown evident in our natural areas, and for those that work in the ecotourism industry, with lost hopes of encouraged civic participation in contributing to the wellness of the atmosphere and world. I invite you to consider how you can make a difference and how you can support ecotourism by participating in the tourism itself or supporting operations that contribute to continued programs. Furthermore, to understand these beneficial impacts and to break the imposed frown that ecotourism faces by some of society. At the end of the day, there is no planet B. Thank you.